Hello, and welcome to AI-powered cyber recovery and remediation. Today's webinar is sponsored by Rubrik and Microsoft and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech Media, and I am excited to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the webinar control panel in the questions box. So not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. A Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues, but if that doesn't work, just let us know again there in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Now, second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources, and I'd especially like to call your attention to a few there. There's an ebook for building a cyber resilient organization. There's a solution brief about Rubrik for Microsoft Sentinel. There's a free trial for Microsoft Sentinel, and there's also a link where you can book a meeting with Rubrik and Microsoft to go into personalized detail about the information that you'll hear in this webinar and how it can apply to the specifics of your organization. And we'll have a QR code for that as well later. So check out those links now. You can download them now and throughout the event, or click on the links. And I encourage you to access those resources and share them with your friends and colleagues. Now, third, at the end of this webinar event, we'll be awarding a $250 Best Buy gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. Official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. Also, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenters. So to help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Best Buy gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. After the event is over, we'll look through all the questions that came in, pick out a great one, and contact that prize winner. And with that, let's get to today's fantastic content. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. We have Bill Gerling, who manages technical go-to-market strategy for new products at Rubrik. And we have Angelica Faber, who's a principal security architect at Microsoft. So Bill and Angelica, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here with Bill.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. Excited to be here and presenting this interesting content.
Well, thanks for coming on. I will back out of the scene and let you guys take it away.
All right. Thanks so much. Let's jump right in. Okay, so make sure I can see that slide. Oh, here we go. Now I can see that slide. Okay, so again, so happy to be here with Bill and the Rubrik team to talk about this topic, which is actually one of my favorite topics to talk about. I want to start with a slide about Microsoft security and how much we've done in the last 2 years. This is focused on Microsoft security specifically. And what I want to show using these headlines is how important security is for Microsoft. We really made significant investments and we continue to make investments in security because it is a priority at Microsoft. Yes, we are the largest security company in the world, a security vendor in the world. And in case you weren't already aware, I think that's really in large part due to our ability to listen to our customers. In the last 6 months of 2022, we launched more than 300 product innovations to help organizations stay ahead of evolving security threats. And that was even before the OpenAI announcements that were made, which brings me to this last headline here that I kind of snuck in here. This was January 2023. We announced that we were investing $10 billion in OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT. And I'm sure by now you've seen some of the announcements of the services that have been the result of that investment, and also the result of quite a bit of years of research internally at Microsoft. And I mentioned this in regards to security specifically, because we have been incorporating AI and machine learning in our security services for a while, but it's only going to get bigger. And here, like I was saying earlier, we are the largest security vendor in the world. We know we have a great responsibility. We take that responsibility very seriously, which is to protect our customers and to work together with other defenders such as Rubrik. From this slide right here, I just really wanted to show you the number of signals, which is currently 65 trillion daily signals that we get at Microsoft. And that's really incredibly important, especially when we're talking about AI, because the amount of signals and the variety of signals matters, because that's really what feeds AI and machine learning models to learn the patterns, to be able to detect incidents. I personally firmly believe that this ultimately makes security engineers that much more efficient. And frankly, I think it actually also prevents burnout, which is so ongoing in this industry. So a little bit about Microsoft Security. It does involve a wide variety of services, but the one that we're focusing on today is Sentinel. We're doing an integration. We're going to be demoing an integration between Sentinel, Rubrik Security Cloud, and OpenAI. Actually, we're using Azure OpenAI, which is even a better option. But I want to highlight that Sentinel is not the only Microsoft security product. It's also not the only security services that is actually integrates with Rubrik Security Cloud, but it is the one that we're covering today. And Sentinel is primarily a SIEM solution. And you may already know this, but I just want to make sure that we're all in the same understanding. What is the SIEM solution? SIEM stands for Security Incident Event Management, but that's not just ingesting logs. It is also ensuring that you have the correct rules in place to raise those incidents and to let the teams know what needs to be prioritized. So why would organizations use the SIEM solution? There's various reasons. Maybe they want to detect and respond to security threats. Maybe they want better investigation. Maybe they want to centralize management of security events in one place for everything. Maybe they have specific compliance requirements that mandate a SIEM solution. I know that there are some cybersecurity insurance companies that previously were not requiring a SIEM solution, but recently have been. So that might be another reason. And this is where a cloud-native SIEM solution can make a really huge difference. I think it is actually that combination of being cloud-native solution, which is flexible enough to store all the various types of security data with a great variety of options depending on the type of data, when it's needed, what it's needed for. But it's also combined with AI and machine learning models. Because that's, again, what is going to make those security teams that much more efficient. To me, it's really that combination of those two items, the cloud scale with AI, that makes Sentinel such a good option for us, the SIEM solution. Okay, and here I want to briefly show a slide of where Sentinel kind of fits in and some of the services that it integrates with. Our approach to security at Microsoft is to understand both the breadth and the depth of the entire state, to look at everything that's going on end to end. Our breadth approach is delivered with Microsoft Sentinel, which is our cloud-native SIEM. A depth approach is delivered through XDR services, such as Microsoft 365 Defender, which is a SaaS XDR solution, and Microsoft Defender for Cloud, which is primarily for PaaS, Platform as a Service, and Infrastructure as a Service for XDR. Okay. And so in this slide, I just really want to show you the various different options that customers have to ingest data into Sentinel. So there's, as you can see here, great wide variety of options. On the right here, we have our native connectors. Those are the Microsoft connectors, which they come in and they're in a separate area, not because they're in a separate location within the SIEM as you see in the demo, but rather because they're coming in through a different format. So they're coming in directly into the Log Analytics workspace. The Log Analytics workspace is where Sentinel service is actually deployed on top of. And then we have our partner connectors. One of those connectors is the Rubrik connector that we're going to be highlighting today during the demo. And by the way, they're both available in the same blade, as you're going to see. It's just that, again, we're just showing how that connection is coming in. From on-prem, that is mostly agent-based, but there are still options. And even here, you're actually seeing IoT and OT networks that we can get logs into Sentinel from. I'm here showing that connection coming from Defender for IoT. And then on the top, finally, there's another wide variety of custom applications, including Azure Functions, Logic Apps, which you're actually going to see in action for a different purpose today, and a variety of different scripts and languages that you can use as well. So the options are plenty, and there's probably not all of them in there. Okay. And so in here, to dig in a little bit deeper into Sentinel, which was one of my favorite services, and I want to highlight that Sentinel is not just a SIEM solution. Yet it is primarily a SIEM solution, but it can also act as a SOAR solution. In fact, during today's demo, you're going to see that portion of Sentinel. So SOAR is for security orchestration, automation, and response. So it means that you can and you really should automate as much as possible when it comes to security incidents to make those SOC analysts that much more efficient. In fact, our demo today is going to show this in action. It's also going to show the integration with Azure OpenAI, which is done via these automation playbooks, which are really Azure Logic Apps. So if you're familiar with Azure Logic Apps for some other purpose within your organization, it's the same Logic app. So you already know some of it, how to do this. Sentinel also includes other AI features within the product. It actually includes UEBA, User Entity Behavioral Analytics, which helps to identify behavioral anomalies for threat hunting and for detection. And it also includes Fusion, which is used to detect multi-stage attacks. Let's see. And finally, I just have one last slide here talking about AI. It's really talking specifically about Azure OpenAI because that's the integration that we're going to be showing a little later during this webinar. And I just wanted to quickly highlight why Azure OpenAI is a smart move, especially when the stakes are higher and when data sets must be protected and when privacy is of the utmost importance because it uses the Azure infrastructure. So you can set permissions using the Azure RBAC model, and you can also use the networking that is in place to protect those resources. And I could probably go on and on, but I'm actually going to stop here and let Bill tell you a little bit about the Rubrik Security Cloud, and then we'll show all the three of them in action.
Thanks, Angelica. And hey, everybody, happy to have you on and appreciate you taking a look at the content today. So I'm just going to set the stage around sort of the problem statement that Rubrik is trying to solve with our technologies and capabilities. I'll give you a quick overview of Rubrik Security Cloud, what the platform does, why it does it, and then we'll dive a little bit into where we interoperate with Microsoft Sentinel sort of out of the box, show you a demo of the platform, and then I'll hand it back to Angelica, and she can dive in on kind of what we've built and how we've extended things. So the world that we live in today from an information system security perspective is definitely one that we like to call assume breach, right? Cloud data in general is booming. We're seeing triple-digit, growth numbers in terms of data services and public cloud platforms. Year over year, we're seeing something like a 50% uptick in ransomware attacks that are specifically targeting cloud-based resources. Unlike on-premises systems, what we see is a publicly exposed control plane, right? So all an attacker really needs to do in order to have ubiquitous access to the platform tooling and the control plane of these platforms is, they need to bypass identity and access management and MFA somehow. This could be through a 0-day. Folks get social engineered, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's not to say that you don't need, perimeter defenses in place. Obviously, defense in depth is something that we should all adhere to. But what it does mean is that you need to plan for worst case scenario, right? And that worst case scenario that we often see is that these attackers somehow gain access to a system. They move laterally, they elevate their privileges, and then they'll take sort of the traditional TTP approach where they encrypt and ransom. They'll also exfiltrate sensitive data for the purposes of double extortion on the dark web, and then they'll destroy secondary copies, right? So traditional data protection solution, they're gonna seek and destroy those recovery points wherever they can, because they see those as just a valid target as the primary data sets, since they're going to be used for recovery, and not being able to recover is a point of leverage for these threat actors. So, our Zero Labs report that we published recently found that like 93% of the time, these attackers are trying to find recovery points in data protection services when they breach cloud assets. And then about 73% of the time, they succeed in the destruction. And, this is straight out of M-Trends 2023. So you need to have a plan for recovery. That's the bottom line here. And really everybody in the business is interested in having a plan in place, whether they work in traditional IT infrastructure, whether they are some sort of more cloudy persona, like a cloud architect or an application architect, or whether they manage a service like, say, M365 or some other sort of end user compute service. Everybody here has the responsibility for protecting their data, and everybody here is used to using some sort of tooling specific to their data set when it comes to data security and data recoverability. But ultimately, the folks that really have the most skin in the game here are the stakeholders on the right-hand side, who really just want proof that their data is protected, recoverable, and that they can pass an audit. And then, these security personas sort of peanut butter spread throughout the environment, who really just want to be able to respond to incidents quickly, efficiently, and consistently when something happens, right? And that security persona specifically is sort of what Angelica and I have targeted with our efforts here. But it's tough in today's sort of landscape, because what we find is that the bulk of folks are operating in at least one public cloud platform, sometimes many. They've often got traditional workloads in the data center, virtualized workloads, some physical still floating around out there, enterprise applications, that still live on premises. And then they've got some kind of SaaS footprint as well. M365 is a super common one and relevant to the discussion that we're having here today. And so trying to get your arms around where your data actually lives, whether it's recoverable in accordance with, the business's requirements and SLAs, whether it's safe from some sort of malicious actor, either seeking to exfiltrate or destroy. It's really a difficult problem, because each of these platforms and implementations has a different way of delivering on its promises. And honestly, the capabilities and limitations of each of these platforms vary greatly, and how you build and assign policies, how you execute a recovery, how you achieve things like zero trust and immutability. It's different platform to platform and architecture to architecture. And so you've got these stakeholders on this previous slide that just don't feel confident that these workloads are all sufficiently protected, right? And that's kind of where Rubrik comes into play. I'm trying to skip slides, and I should just go through the builds again instead of clicking. And really what we've done is we've built out a platform that is designed to give you peace of mind around data security, regardless of what workload you're protecting, what consumption model you're using, or what asset is in scope here. And this high-level diagram sort of describes how our platform works, right? It's a SaaS control plane, and inside of that control plane, we've built the capability to link in all of your enterprise data sets, regardless of where they reside. If it's a cloud platform, it's predominantly an API-based integration where we'll inventory the assets in your cloud platform, allow you to build and assign policies and protect those workloads without the need for sort of monolithic things in your cloud estate. If it's a data center workload, you can deploy a data mover and our software suite next to those workloads so that we can ingest them quickly and rapidly recover them. If it's a SaaS workload, again, predominantly API integrated discovery and protection with a hosted data plane that allows you to get that secondary copy of the data outside of the primary service and somewhere where you can make it properly immutable and isolate it from the fault domain of the primary. And so single control plane for all of these assets. You link in whatever it is that you want to protect and secure. You build policies, you assign those policies. I'll show you some of this during the demo. And then once those policies are assigned, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, we're going to start creating recovery points. We're going to make them immutable. We're going to log the metadata over sort of a time series view so that you have sort of that historical view of all the recovery points. Obviously, you can use them for operational backup and restore. I mean, that's sort of the key point, right? Being able to recover. But also on top of that traditional data protection, what we also bring to the table is the ability to analyze that time series through our observability tools and the ability to do things like identify anomalous behavior on a file system, identify, ransomware-esque behavior on a file system, the ability to catalog and alert on sensitive data when it resides somewhere that it's not supposed to reside, the ability to dig into this time series and find indicators of compromise that may be indicative of a latent or dormant threat inside of the environment. We've also built sort of a posture tool, right? A data protection risk assessment dashboard inside of the platform that will give you a heads-up display as to how well you're postured against malicious actors relative to the Rubrik config. And then we've also built the ability to do automated recovery testing into an isolated recovery environment so that you can conduct forensics or just validate recoverability. So that's kind of the platform in a nutshell. And then really the key points that we like to hammer on, especially with regards to cloud workloads, is that this is a unified tool with a policy-driven architecture, auto discover, auto protect. You'll have the recovery points in accordance with the business objectives and SLAs, and then we'll continuously monitor those for sensitive data, anomalous activity, et cetera, and allow you to quickly and easily recover in the event that you need to. So that's sort of the bottom line up front as far as what Rubrik does. And really where it gets interesting is when we partner up with Microsoft. Pretty much every time we partner up with Microsoft, it gets interesting. We've co-engineered the 365 solution together. We've been working on a lot of interesting and fun integrations. And this Sentinel one that is already available, like if you go into Content Hub right now, if you're logged into Sentinel, you can find what's shown on the screen here, consumable out of the box today, right? And so basically, Rubrik Security Cloud is creating these recovery points. It's analyzing the time series of data, and it's throwing events when it finds anomalous behavior, right? Well, the incident responder is going to want to use all of this really cool tooling on the Microsoft side of the house. They're not necessarily going to want to log into a data protection tool in order to respond. And so what we've built, just sort of table stakes wise, is the ability for all of our events to stream into log analytics tables inside of Sentinel. And then we've also built some SOAR playbooks that you can execute that will allow you to take action based upon the events that are streaming in, right? So you may restore a snapshot for forensics purposes, or you may run a threat hunt, or you may run sensitive data discovery for a specific data type, or what have you. So all these activities are available to you through SOAR playbooks in Sentinel today. And this integration that's shown on the screen right now is sort of the basis for what we've done with Azure OpenAI and some of the ChatGPT-like functionality that you're going to see in a moment. So with that, I'd really just like to take you on a quick tour of Rubrik Security Cloud. I'm going to keep it high level, but I want you to have the context around where these events that we're taking action on in Sentinel are coming from and what capabilities we provide. So let's do that real quick. Okay. So this is Rubrik Security Cloud. This is the dashboard that you land on when you first log in. You can customize this, right? But you've basically got the heads-up display for data security on this dashboard, right? You can see your various workload types that have been onboarded and protected, whether they're cloud, whether they're SaaS, or whether they're data center workloads. And you can, just sort of see the state of the state here, as it were. From here, you can pivot into a bunch of different directions. I'm going to show you data protection to begin with. So we're right here in this data protection view right now. And if you flip over into inventory, this is going to be where you get most of the traditional kind of operational backup and restore functionality out of the platform, right? So if I come here, I say grab a vSphere VM, I can scroll through this view, I can search through this view. Maybe I want to find a file server, search for something that has FS in it, right? I drill down. This is a vSphere VM. It's just what I've chosen as an example for the time being. And when you drill down into this object, you get this calendar view. Anything that's got a green check mark has a recovery point in it. You can drill down into that recovery point and you can begin to take action in terms of restores, right? So I could come here and I could just run a recovery workflow. I could do an in-place recovery, an out-of-place recovery. I could restore granularly, right? Like files, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I could mount up disks. So this is your sort of menu of restoration options for this specific object. And in our platform, it really doesn't matter what you're protecting, you get that same user experience, right? So if I come over here to Microsoft Azure and I just grab, some random Azure VM that's being protected, you'll see it looks a whole lot like the vSphere VM, and I'm given similar recovery options when I drill down into that restore workflow. Where we really begin to differentiate is what we're doing in terms of observability for each of these objects, right? So I have an option here for my Azure VM workloads, for my vSphere VM workloads, anything that's got a file system on it, right? I have the option to pivot into ransomware monitoring for that object. And I can also come over here and I can look at ransomware monitoring more holistically in this purpose-built room with this purpose-built dashboard. If I hit investigate under the anomaly events, what I'm shown is a list of objects that have been flagged for anomalous behavior. And then I can drill down here and I can see that the most recent snapshot of this particular virtual machine has some anomalous activity on it. If I continue to drill down, you can see sort of file removals, file additions. If you get more granular, you'll eventually be able to see, whether or not we found a ransom note, what sort of suspicious files have come into existence, what files have been removed, et cetera, et cetera. You can get a summary view here for the snapshot that's being investigated, where you can see that we've, identified a strain based upon the sort of the TTPs that we've seen here on this asset. And then you can see kind of the event timeline that led us to the determination that we've made. And beyond that, we can also pivot into our sensitive data discovery view here, which is also available as another room. And from here, we can sort of enrich any sort of forensic activity we might be doing with identification of sensitive data on the file system of this VM, for example. We can also do this for other object types. So we could do this, for, say, OneDrive or for an Azure VM in addition to vSphere, but that's just what I'm showing you right now. And so here, you can see I've built some policies that have been assigned to this VM. The policies are shown here, which policies have hits and which ones do not have hits. These analyzers are available out of the box, most of the common ones. You can also custom build analyzers if you've got proprietary data that you'd like to identify. And basically, what we've given you the capability to do here is now say, look, not only do I know that I have a snapshot that I can recover from, oh, look, there's been anomalous behavior. It looks like ransomware activity. Now I've enriched my viewpoint of this object with sort of the knowledge that there's sensitive data on the file system, and I can even get more prescriptive and see, what specific pieces of sensitive data are here inside of this recovery point. Beyond that, we can also do the threat hunt thing. So if I jump back into ransomware monitoring, we were looking at anomaly detection. But now that I know that I've got an object that's been, say, hit with Lockbit or what have you, I can also take indicators of compromise from some sort of threat intelligence feed, and I can use those to run a threat hunt against that time series. And what this will allow me to do is very quickly determine which recovery point is clean from any sort of latent threat that may have been dwelling in the environment, right? So you may not want to restore yesterday's copy. You may want to go back 2 weeks or a month or something so that you're sort of out of that window when you may be introducing reinfection by running a restore, so on and so forth. And so that's kind of the quick and dirty on Rubrik Security Cloud, on our data protection capabilities, as well as on some of our data security and observability workflows. What I want you to really just retain is this whole anomaly detection piece that we just discussed, because these anomaly events where we're finding Lockbit in this example, these are going to be the feeder into what Angelica is going to show you on the Sentinel side. Because what we want to do is we want to take this capability, this sort of like looking at all of your historicals and identifying anomalous behavior. We want to make that accessible to an incident responder that predominantly uses Microsoft Sentinel. So with that, I'm going to take the share down. I'm going to pass it back to Angelica, who's going to show you a little bit more about what we're doing with Microsoft Sentinel, Azure OpenAI, and Rubrik Security Cloud.
Awesome. So, Bill, you can see my screen, right? Hopefully.
Looks good to me.
Okay, good. All right. So we'll start from the beginning. Like if you were to go into Sentinel, where would you go to see that Rubrik connector? And this is the content hub that Bill was talking about. And this is where you get the Rubrik connector. And by the way, it's not just a connector, like Bill was saying. It actually comes with some SOAR playbooks. So that's why it's a content solution. And it gives you like a little bit of a description of what you can do with this connector. And I already have it installed, obviously, since we're going to do this demo. But if I didn't, I could install it from right here directly. And as Bill was saying, it actually comes with the connector, but it also comes, I kind of jumped in a little too fast. It comes with some playbooks too. And actually, I'm going to dig in a little bit deeper into some of those playbooks and what they do, because you're actually going to see references to it from the suggestions that are going to come in from OpenAI. And I can also, I'm going to just open the connector page so you can actually see that. So I can actually see that there's some data coming in. And he was talking about the anomalies. These are the 3 tables that are being fed from Rubrik Security Cloud. So these are the tables that exist on Sentinel, and the green little icon here shows me that there's data coming in. So that's why they're all lit. If I were to configure this for the very first time, the steps are actually very simple. All you have to do is click deploy to Azure, follow the, what's your resource group name and all that stuff, and then it'll be deployed for you. You can also do it manually if you choose to do so. And then there are some steps. These 2 are post steps to basically configure the Azure function to receive that data from the Rubrik Security Cloud. And we did this on the phone. I think Bill and I did this. I think it took us like 5 minutes to do it. So it's actually pretty straightforward. And then immediately, couple minutes, not even an hour later, you're going to start seeing the data coming in. But this is what the source of the data is. Let's see. I went through the all right, so now I want to show you the analytic rules, because these are the rules that you're going to be able to configure that determines what are the incidents that are going to be raised within Sentinel. And I just kept it very simple for this demo. But I am going to show you a little bit of a few things in there to keep in mind. So I just, named it Rubrik Anomaly. And in this case, I selected some minor tactics and techniques. And the reason for that is within Sentinel, there's a fusion machine learning algorithm that determines, it's able to pick up on multi-stage attacks. So for example, if an attack starts on a endpoint and then moves to like one of these VMs or file system and then moves to maybe some IoT system or to somewhere else, it's able to see the relationships between those. And so for the fusion machine algorithm to pick up these analytic rules, it's going to need two things, tactics and techniques, and it's also going to need some entity mapping to be able to map how those entities relate. So those two things keep also in mind as you're creating these analytic rules. And like I said, I kept it very simple because I just want to basically raise those events. The other thing that I wanted to show you here is that we're in this demo that Bill and I created, we are going to show you as I run this playbook manually so that you can see kind of the before and after right there. But you could make this automated. So I could trigger this playbook that I'm going to show you a little bit later to run automatically every time this rule creates an incident. Or, I can make it dependent upon other factors as well. So, but it can be triggered automatically. Okay, so now the other thing that I wanted to show you, let's just show you the incident and then how the playbook runs. So I'm going to pick, obviously, some of these Rubrik incidents. And I'm just going to pick, these are some of the anomalies that you saw on his side. This is the one that he was pointing out. And I'm just going to pick one of these, this lockbit one. And I'm actually going to run the playbook because it takes like a minute to run, and then I'll walk you through the incident. And I'm actually I have two versions of this. And by the way, we're doing this live. We're praying on the demo with God so everything else good. But I have two versions of this because we originally did this with OpenAI, but then we did it with Azure OpenAI. And that's the one that I'm going to run now. It's basically an exact copy of the playbook, and I'll show you the playbook after it runs. It just connects to a different endpoint. All right, and I can actually watch it as it runs, but it'll be done in a minute, like less than a minute. You're probably going to start seeing the updates here. Look, I can actually see the task being created already, so it's very fast. But I wanted to show you that you can actually, when you click on that incident, you can see a description. You can see the specific entity that is associated because of that entity mapping that was done. So I can see the entity that is coming from Rubrik show up in here. So if I wanted to dig in more and get more information onto that, I would be able to do so. I can get the alert, and I can also group them if I wanted to. And I can actually get some comments, which I'm actually going to see in here. So I'm actually going to refresh because it's probably done by now. So the fact that I see 4 tasks here tells me it's pretty much done. And the fact that I see a tag here. So when I ran that playbook, what it did was it did a few things. The first thing, kind of the last thing that it does, it is actually updates the incident activity log. So SOC analysts typically make their comments and they keep all their information about how they're investigating into this area. When that playbook ran, and you can see the little icon here for the playbook, it updated this comment here, and it's kind of just telling, hey, a SOC analyst, just noticed that there was some incident task recommended by Azure OpenAI. Please review tasks and complete if appropriate. And asking for feedback. Let me know if there's any feedback and email it to me. And then the other thing that it did was it added a tag. And the reason for the tag was sometimes there's, you still have to grow used to this AI, and I understand that's the case. So adding a tag can later allow you to do some reporting on those incidents that where incident tasks were updated by Azure OpenAI. So you can do some reporting and then analyze and whatever. But these are the tasks, and I have no idea what it's going to show here because I just ran it. But these are the tasks that are coming in from Azure OpenAI. So first of all, it tells me to confirm the incident, and it knows what tables to look at. It's also, then it also, you should review Rubrik console to determine the extent of the potential ransomware. So it does let you know that, hey, there's another place that you can go out to. There's also, it's telling me to use the Rubrik anomaly investigations page. So it kind of, it's telling me where to go to dig in deeper. And in some cases, it actually tells me, and I don't know if this one told me, but in some cases, it might actually tell me to run some of the playbooks that are generated. And then furthermore, it's actually giving me a query, a KQL query to run, and it knows the schema of the Rubrik tables, and I'm going to show you how we did that, how we accomplished this, and I'll jump over to the actual playbook so you can see the contents of this. So this is the playbook, and like I said, the playbook is a logic app. It's an Azure, regular Azure logic app. It is triggered by the incident, Sentinel incident. And what we did was we created a custom connector, and I'll show it to you when I'm done here. But we're feeding it through, we're connecting to Azure OpenAI. And then there's, in GPT 3.5 and 4, there's a new role that exists for messages. There's actually 2 new roles. So it's not just the user message. There's a new system message that can basically set the context for the conversation with Azure OpenAI. And this goes for both OpenAI and Azure OpenAI, these new message roles. What it does is it sets the context of kind of the guardrails of when it's going to answer, when it's going to make suggestions on these tasks that the SOC analyst should do, it should give it within this context. And so in here, I'm telling it all that information to say, hey, go to Rubrik Cloud and search for this. Hey, or run this playbook. It knows because those are the guidelines that we are feeding it here. So that's how we're doing this. For now, I should say, because there's some changes that were announced that are actually going to make this a little bit easier for us to do. And so and because I'm actually asking it here for 3 steps, because what I want to do is update each of these tasks so that the SOC analyst can then check them off as done as they go along. And so I need to split those tasks into 3 sections so that I can insert them. So I needed to know what answer it gave me before. And currently there's no stateful API, but you can do what we're doing here, which is prompt chaining. So what the answer that it gave me over here, I'm feeding it over here through the assistant role. So that's the second new role that is available. So the assistant role, I can do many things. I can feed it the answer that it gave me previously. I can give it examples of how I want it to answer. There's a lot of things that I can't do. But in this case, I'm actually feeding it the answer so that when it splits that those steps into 1, 2, and 3, it knows what, in what respect and what answer was it. So then when I go and insert this task into Sentinel, then I'll be inserting only task 1. And I basically repeat the same thing for 2 in here, and then for step 3 here. In the KQL one, we do something a little bit different. We're actually feeding it the KQL schema, so the table schema. So it knows which columns exist in that table, and it knows which, so when it makes a suggestion for KQL queries, it's an actual suggestion that is actually going to work. So we're feeding it that information. And then finally, I'm just updating the incident with the tags that I was telling you about, and the little message that you saw show up in there. There's more stuff that we can do. I can raise the severity based on some answer that OpenAI gave me. I can change the status. I can automatically assign it. There's a lot that I can do. But this is a lot of how we're accomplishing what we're accomplishing right now. And actually, we are at 15 off. Do I have time to go over the connector, or should we just stop for questions here?
I think we've probably got time to cover the connector really quick. I've been answering Q&A in the chat window as well.
Okay, so I was just gonna cover it really easy. Like I said, we created two, one for OpenAI and one for Azure OpenAI. There's very little that is different about them. They're both created in the same manner through these custom logic connectors. And all I do is, and I could put my own little image, but all I do is I put my host name, and then I set up the security. So this is how it's going to authenticate. And this is primarily the reason why I'm using a custom connector and not just like a regular HTTP call, because I want to be able to keep that API key secure. So when I come here to do this configuration here, sorry, not there, API connections here. So this Azure, this key here, I cannot see that key. I can only update it with a new one, but it's kept in a safe. So that's why, honestly, that's really the main reason for creating that custom connector. But this only has one action right here, which is the completion action. And I create the request. All I do is really cut and paste from the body when I do an API call. In the case of Azure OpenAI, it requires API version. In the case of OpenAI, it does not require the API version. It does, and the OpenAI one, it requires the model with GPT 3.5 or 4, whatever you're using. But in Azure OpenAI, it doesn't, because each deployment has its own model. And the same thing with the response. But it's very, very straightforward to create this connection. So I'm going to stop right here and stop sharing. And maybe we can take some questions.
Okay, that sounds great, and great demo there, Angelica, and also yours, Bill. Really appreciate those. And before we do get into the questions, I just want to point out two things. One is there's this link here for the Microsoft Sentinel free trial, so you can get that through this link. It's also in your handout section. Highly recommend taking advantage of that link. And I'll go ahead and forward this, even though I'm not leaving it up for very long, just because it is also in your handout section, so you can grab it there. And then also, if you're interested in speaking with Rubrik and Microsoft and finding out, how this would work in your environment and, getting a lot more detail, there's this QR code here will help you set up an appointment. And you also get a $100 gift card for participating in that. So great offer there. So yeah, I'll just leave that QR code on screen here, and let's do get into some questions. And this first one, Angelica, is for you, is a good one to start with. And this comes from Ken, and it's a definitional question. He's wondering if Sentinel is a security operations center as a service. Like, is that a useful way to think about it?
It is. It can be, I guess, is the answer. So we have some partners that offer managed services, managed security services, and they use SIEM. Actually, we have quite a bit of partners that do that, but we don't offer it directly, and Microsoft does not. It's mostly our partners that use it for that purpose.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Next question here comes from Chris, which is, say somebody gets, does download, Sentinel or is, looking into, using the Microsoft and Rubrik tools together. Chris is wondering, what training would you recommend to get the most out of this functionality? So maybe I'll direct that to Bill first, and then Angelica, if you want to chime in with anything too.
Yeah, I would start with just reading the docs, to be honest. If you're a Microsoft partner, the Partner Center is also quite good, but there is a ton of publicly available resources, both in terms of self-paced training, as well as just sort of like ad hoc documentation that you can dig through on the web. Honestly, that's where I've taught myself everything that I've learned about the service. I haven't gone through any formal training. Angelica, you may know more about the formal options.
There's a lot of options. We have training on online. We have the Learn, which the documents are now part of learn.microsoft.com, but there's also some official training that you can walk through. So like if you're looking to train yourself on to pass some certification, there's training there. I also have a session that I deliver to partners that is actually on YouTube. You could probably search on YouTube and say Sentinel deep scaling session, and that session is like 3 hours though. I don't know if you want to go to 3 hours of Sentinel, but if you want to, it's there, and I kind of take Sentinel corner to corner, and there's probably a ton more available as well. And I have some links, so if you go to, actually that page is being updated, but there's still some links in there, aka.ms/Sentinel links. I have a ton of links there too.
Okay, super. Another question here comes from James, who's wondering, what do we need to install on each endpoint device to feed all logs back to Rubrik or to Microsoft Sentinel? So I guess maybe Angelica first, just like what are the requirements on Sentinel, and then we'll turn to Bill.
Well, to get data from Rubrik, we don't need anything on the endpoints because it's coming in through the connector that I showed. So as long as if that's all you need, you just need to set up the Rubrik connector. You can set up additional, there's an agent, the Azure monitoring agent that you can install to get additional data, like syslog data and cephlog data into Sentinel as well.
And on the Rubrik side, in terms of like ingesting workloads and protecting them, it's really going to depend on what workload you want to protect. But if we assume, a commonplace thing like a virtual machine, you're either going to, if it's a premises-based virtual machine, you're going to link in whatever hypervisor that VM is running under, right? Typically, that's going to be some sort of API credentials for things like vSphere or Hyper-V. And then we'll inventory and protect through the control plane of the hypervisor. For Azure VMs, we just need a service principal with a custom role at the subscription level. And then other workloads will have other requirements. Physicals, we do need an agent. Relational databases, we would need an agent. But most of your just general purpose VMs will inventory and protect through the hypervisor without the need for any service ingest. We do have a service that you can install, which we will use in lieu of something like VMware Tools. And basically what that gives us the ability to do is just more performant file level restores, persisting ACL, stuff like that. So let me know if that don't answer the question. You can reach out to me directly and we can dig a little deeper. But generally, you're just going through the hypervisor or through an API.
Super. Yeah, thanks for that detail. And we had a question here from Yangsheng just about, can you provide this video link for later review? Everyone on this session will get an email within 24 to 48 hours with a link where you can rewatch it. So if you want to catch some details that you might have missed, you can do that. And I also want to call out, if you haven't been monitoring the question section, Bill has been like furiously answering Rubrik related questions in there as well. A lot of great answers in there, so be sure to scan through that. Angelica, there's another question here. This one's from Joseph, who's wondering, what's the best way to bridge leveraging AI, ML to triage mundane events and involving human analysts at the right time?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I've had deep conversations about that topic. I think in general, and there's probably like a Venn diagram of issues that are good, where you don't need like one deterministic answer because you're talking about AI, so you're dealing with probabilistic type answers, and that's what you should be looking for. So where there's not one right answer, you want for example, your SOC analysts, they want options of what things to try. They want, ideas, brainstorming type of ideas. And then something that your SOC analysts are going to be using all the time, that is going to be, because it does need human interaction. It's not like just automation on its own, but it's going to need some kind of human interaction to go with it. And then also it's got to be worth it, because GPUs are not free, right? So it's got to be something that it's worth the outcome of what you're trying to do. So there's a ton of things that exist within that area of that range, and there's probably a lot more. We're demonstrating one use case here, but there's probably a lot more, and we'll probably continue to cooperate and work together to develop additional use cases. But hopefully that somewhat answers the question.
Great. And Angelica, you actually made a reference to, some things that had just been announced. I know Microsoft just held its Build show, I think a little over a week ago in Seattle. Any news from Build that has implications either for Microsoft Sentinel or for what you guys are doing with Rubrik and, some of the things you've been talking about today?
Yeah, Bill and I were talking about that actually, because there were some announcements during Build. For example, the functionality that I was showing you here, it's using that system message quite heavily. So we're using a lot of tokens in that message. But going forward, Azure OpenAI announced they're going to be able to use you're going to be able to feed it data files, and technically you have some data files that you can use right now, but there's new functionality that was announced during Build where you can actually upload these files and even point to some of our Azure services to bring that data from those services so that you can truly give it some ability to search within the data that you want it to search when it's answering or suggesting or making recommendations. So it's basically, you don't have to depend so much on that system message communicating with the API, but you can actually feed it this data, pre-feed it this data to that instance, to that Azure OpenAI instance, so that it knows that whenever it's answering these questions, these are the guardrails that I need to, this is where I can search for information. And so it's kind of like an in-between fine-tuning and that system and an assistant messages. It's kind of like a really nice in-between. And so we're probably going to be able to take advantage of those features to make this even better and, less expensive, really.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. And I guess, maybe there's time for one more question. There's just been so much excitement around AI lately, with, publicly facing tools like DALL-E 2 and ChatGPT, and then all the ChatGPT integration into Bing. And you showed some of that in your demo, Angelica, and you've talked a little bit about, sort of near-term announcements, out of Build. But what does the future look like in terms of, all that energy around AI? What are you really looking forward to, that's going to be sort of rolled into Sentinel, sort of like in the long term, that can really sort of make a big difference on this stuff?
Well, we keep making announcements. It seems like every other week we do. So it's moving very fast. I'm personally super excited about it. I see huge potential. And I also see, from a strictly security perspective, we've been dealing with burnout, with not having sufficient people to do sometimes some of the job. So bringing AI into security is really we're welcoming it with open arms because the help is definitely needed. I see a lot of potential for it going further. We even announced a Microsoft Security Copilot as well, which is in our website, which is also going to help, and it uses AI. It runs on Azure OpenAI. So it's yet another AI tool that we're adding. So I think for me, I have like a huge list of scenarios that I want to test. For me, it's like I just need the time to be able to test them. But I think there's going to be a lot of change, but a lot of welcome change, because it's going to help SOC analysts, I believe, in the end.
Absolutely, and that burnout issue is so big, and AI really seems like it can help with that. Bill, from the Rubrik side, just as sort of any closing thoughts, as far as how you guys are looking at AI and what you're looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just scratching the surface, right? What we're doing here is essentially a proof of concept or a proof of idea that brings some useful, albeit tactical, implementations of natural language processing into the portfolio. Honestly, there's so much opportunity to leverage this tooling to either improve our organization, our product, or integrations with third-party products that it'd be almost impossible to state every possible use case, right? But I mean, from code generation to assisting with support, onboarding, documentation, and how users interact with documentation. I mean, the sky's kind of the limit, right? Anywhere where you have a big glut of data or knowledge and a sort of an untrained user that wants to extract outputs from that data set or that knowledge without having to be an expert, there's probably a use case for this type of tooling. So I don't think it's about is there a use case? I think the question is like, what's the most important use case and what order do you prioritize them in? So I think we'll just continue to see tons of innovation and iteration in this space at Rubrik, at Microsoft, and elsewhere in the industry.
Fantastic. Well, you guys have been generous with your time. We'll let you get back to that work of prioritizing, what we can all look forward to. And thank you both so much for being on and for bringing us up to speed on how you guys are moving this Rubrik Microsoft partnership forward. It's really exciting.
Thanks.
Thanks, Scott.
All right. And I hope you grabbed that QR code and all that time. Again, we've got about a minute left, so I'm going to move off of the slide, but you can also grab it from the handouts link if you'd like it there. And before we wrap up, we do have one more piece of business. That's the Best Buy gift card prize drawing. And the winner of the $250 Best Buy gift card is Jason Doak from Virginia. So congratulations to Jason. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And of course, we had so many great questions today, so it'll be tough to pick that $50 winner. But I know from the number of questions that you guys really got value out of the session, and we really appreciate the questions because it helps us make sure that we're giving you the content that you want, the information that you need. So thanks as always for attending and for your great questions. Again, I want to thank Rubrik and Microsoft for making this event possible. And on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, thanks again, everybody, and have a great day.